Welcome to Jurassic Park.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while?
Do you want to know what it is?
There's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
Shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee.
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.
There's a special rug in hell reserved for people who waste good scotch.
He peed on my rug!
He peed on the dude's rug.
Do your worst.
Final report of the commercial starship Nostromo.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
I want to dance with somebody. I want to feel the heat with somebody. Welcome to Your Feature Presentation, the podcast where we explore stories through the latest movies and pop culture. I am your host, Heath Fall, and with me, the ever-present, ever-faithful, get that butter, get that salt out of here, popcorn lover, Andrew McKay. I don't know why I started.
It's me, Mario.
Hello, it's me. Hi, I'm the problem.
It's me. I still don't have a voice.
His voice is still gone.
All's well, all's well.
Good. Well, welcome, everyone. We got a really fun interview with our buddy, Gary The Cosmere Junkie. We're going to talk about what we want from a Mistborn movie. So we're going to get into that pretty quick here. We're just going to quickly go through movies and some TVs coming out this week, which is really exciting. So quickly, movie, Red One.
Mm-hmm. Red One is about a villain who kidnaps Santa Claus from the North Pole. Elf, extremely large and formidable. Operative joins forces with the world's most accomplished tracker to find him and save Christmas.
And who plays Elf?
Who plays Elf? Isn't it Chris Evans?
No, The Rock.
Elf is played in extremely large and formidable. That makes sense. But Chris Evans is also in this movie.
Oh, is he? Because I know Dwayne The Rock Johnson is the kind of like agent Elf.
It's The Rock, Chris Evans, J.K. Simmons.
And this is by Jake Kasdan, the director of the Jumanji movies. So I think that's kind of the vibe you're going to get from it. So
yeah,
probably light-hearted family Christmas movie.
Yeah. Up next is Here. This is Tom Hanks, and it is about one home. Multiple generations of couples and families inhabit the same home over the course of a century. I watched the trailer for this movie, and I almost cried just with the trailer. It looks like it's such a Tom Hanks movie. It's Robert Zemeckis from Back to the Future.
Has he done other movies before?
One went Back to the Future, I think. But it just looks so good and so heart-wrenching and heartwarming. You're gonna cry for several reasons.
Yeah. It threw me off a bit because there's a lot of de-aging.
Yeah.
In this, and that did kind of bother me in the trailer, but I don't think we're going to stay there. I mean, yeah, Robert Zemeckis. Forrest Gump, the Back to the Future movie, is like a truly iconic director. Huh? Passed away. I thought you said passed away. I was like, who passed away?
He passed away. No.
You ever get those reactions when you'll see actors and somebody will be like a picture of them and you think they've died?
You're like, no. Oh.
And it's like, just want to shout out happy birthday to George Lucas. Don't do that to me. The maker.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'm the maker. It'll be sad when George Lucas goes. I feel like that's the one that's like, man, James Earl Jones, that was a tough one.
Yeah.
I felt so bad that I had to be the one to tell you that Ian Holm died.
Yeah.
When we were talking about Alien Romulus, like, I hope they got the original actor. I'm like, oh, my sweet baby boy.
Did you know that he died a while ago? I was like, no, I didn't. That's funny.
So we talked a lot. We've been mostly do movies coming out this weekend, but we want to start doing more of the TV shows, like the higher like Apple TV, HBO, like some of these series, even the Netflix ones. Like we're going to be talking about Squid Game, 100% we're going to talk about Squid Game.
Oh, for sure.
So for TV, on the TV front, Silo season 2 is coming out on the 15th. So season 1 is amazing. It's my must-see TV.
Truly. Yep.
So good. So just wanted everyone to know that's coming out. You need to do that. And while you have Apple TV, you need to go, there's a glare. Dune Prophecy is coming out on the 17th. So
what does
you
it
got
have to
that.
do with Apple TV? That's an HBO series.
Is it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, so get Apple TV and HBO. I thought that was
Boom.
Apple ones
Easy
as well.
money. Easy peasy.
So these are some quality TV shows, just like those kind of more mini series style. One on HBO, one on Apple TV. But man, just Dune Prophecy looks really good.
It does.
The quality is high. Silo season 1 is incredible. So just definitely go check those out. I'm not saying don't go see Red 1 this weekend. You didn't hear that from me.
No.
I like to be positive, Andrew, but
sorry,
that movie
Dwayne.
looks so stupid. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, am I being punked? Is that?
Yeah.
Here, yep, definitely looks heartfelt. So, but I would just say, oh, go watch Silo, go watch Doom Prophecy. There's some great stuff coming out. So, all right, so we're gonna get right into we have our buddy Gary Honda on talking about Mistborn. He's the Cosmere Junkie on Instagram. He has some Brandon Sanderson fan page is stuff he does. He has a lot of fun with it. Does a lot of funny memes and stuff like that. So, we're gonna talk about what we want as that adaptation. And here's the interview right now. Welcome to Gary. We have you back on, returning, talking about the Mistborn project. Some call him Odium's champion, but we call him the light eyes of the highest dawn. So welcome, my friend.
Wow.
Thank you. Who calls me Odium's champion?
Wow.
I need to know their names and their addresses, and we'll figure this out.
Yeah, it was your mother-in-law told us that. So.
Yes.
No, she did. She seems like a nice person.
You are first Dawn to her.
Yeah. I couldn't remember the Dawn orders, so that got me in my head, and then I forgot what I was going to call you. So, yeah, was it the
first? First is first.
Okay, first is first, because I thought like something
the
like
king.
The third Dawn for some reason was higher, like it was like a reversed thing. But well, welcome, Gary. How are you doing? How's the Sanderson Cosmere universe for you?
Man, it's been wild. It's been so much fun, though. I got to, I don't know if you want me to go on any anecdotes, but this last Saturday, I got to go to Sanderson's house, which was pretty awesome.
You're kidding.
So, yeah, no, I'm not kidding. And I kind of might have relevance into this topic a little bit, because what happened is one of Sanderson's friends from college, his name's Ben. I'm in a Discord group chat with him, and he would just threw it out there like, hey, does anybody want to binge season 1 of Arcane before season 2 comes out? And I was like, interested. And then I had to back out because my wife had made plans, and then those plans fell through. So I came back the week before this binge was to happen. I'm like, are there still available spots? Can I come? And he said, yes. I got to go. He sent me the address and sent me a picture of where to park. And it's like, don't park next to the Sanderson Pavilion. And I'm like, is this
what?
the Sanderson Pavilion? The instructions said, don't park in front of the Sanderson Pavilion. And then it shows this house, and it's, and I'm like, I have heard of Sanderson's evil lair that he built. That was his splurge when he became famous and wealthy. And it's basically an underground movie theater with a bunch of artifacts on the walls, his piano, grand piano, just a bunch of paintings and artwork. It's just an incredible place. I'm like, I think this might be where we're going. They didn't advertise it. Showed up to the address, and it was. And so we got to watch Arcane season 1 in the theater. It's called The Windrunner, and it was so cool because Sanderson said, in a podcast once intentionally blank that the Windrunner is a professional commercial grade theater. He's
Yeah.
like the only other person he knows that has made a home theater like this is J.J. Abrams. And he's like, multi-million-dollar theater here, right? It is just such a cool experience. But the walls on the side were like a ship with windows, but the windows were screens to clouds and like so it was like you're flying, like you're in the Windrunner. And I don't think there is a ship called the Windrunner yet in Stormlight. There might have been in Rhythm of War, and I just forgot it. It might be a book 5 kind of thing. Who knows? But it was so cool. And to watch Arcane on a big screen is so much better than watching it on my phone like I did before.
Yeah. So Ben just knows Brandon Sanderson like really well.
Yeah, they were college roommates. So basically he's in his writing group, and they meet every week and do and they write together. And basically all of his college friends are now in Bridge 4, except for Ben, because Ben said it was weird and he didn't want to be in it. But
that's weird of Ben. What?
Yeah. So if you've watched Intentionally Blank with Brandon Sanderson and Dan, at the very end of every podcast or every episode, they say, "How's that, Ben?" And it's that, Ben. So
that's hilarious. Wow.
So it sounds like so you didn't meet Brandon Sanderson.
No, he might have been at the main house, but he wasn't part of the binge.
So you were just allowed to be in this area, like watch this, like this theater was a separate, like, oh, that is still so cool. I was gonna say, I assume you would have led with that. It's like, oh yeah, I met Brandon Sanderson.
That's
so.
Were you like, were you anxious? Like he owns this place. He could just walk in and sit down like next to me.
No, I wasn't too anxious about it. From what I've heard, he's pretty like strict with his time and very, very intentional about what he watches. It doesn't seem like he's that casual of a person to just be like on a whim, like, oh, I'm gonna go. But he probably was there. I hear he doesn't like to leave his house very often, and basically,
well, when you own a movie theater,
and he's trying to get it to be a first run theater. He wants to play the brand new movies in there. He's trying to jump through the red tape to do that. But I didn't see it, but I've also heard there's a tunnel that connects the lair to his home.
It's amazing.
He says he bought the empty lot next door and just dug it down. And it's got like 20-foot ceilings. It's huge. It's really cool.
It's amazing.
Dude, this is exactly what I would hope someone who comes into well-earned wealth would do. They're like, why not build a movie theater with a tunnel connecting to my mansion?
Mm-hmm. That's perfect.
And I guess it's kind of relevant to your guys' podcast because you guys talk about movies and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not debunking your plan too much. But like there was a full-blown concession stand that you just man yourself. You just go behind the counter and they had like drawers full of candy and it was awesome.
That's really amazing.
That's so cool.
Like 6 different kinds of popcorn. So
that's so cool. I'm floored right now. That's such a cool topic. That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, he seems to be a machine. Like he talks about how like his scheduling for books and how much he knows how much he needs to write per day and everything's scheduled out. Like, that's so cool that he's been so intentional with that time. And I feel like it's like as fans, we just get benefit from that, you know. What other fandom gets to know the next, 5 projects and when they're coming?
Yeah, seriously.
It's amazing. Yeah. Man, yeah, that derailed me in the best of ways because now I'm just excited for you, Gary. That sounds so cool.
I'm hoping there's more. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, that's so cool that you have that attachment, especially with like your memes and stuff. Like maybe there would be something that he could be on, or I don't know. That'd be so cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the first, I'm going to do a little light movie question. Gary, I'd love to know, because you talk about concession, what's your movie snack of choice?
Well, when I was at Sanderson's, I grabbed M&Ms, mostly because chocolate and popcorn just go so well together. So I did end up going with chocolate, but it was between chocolate and the Airheads. I also like the Sour Patch Kids. It depends on the day, depends on the movie, but those are good choices.
Yeah. Does your popcorn, that when you eat it, does it have salt on it?
Yeah.
Sorry,
salted, right?
That's for Andrew. His mom,
Not my mom.
growing up, she didn't put salt on their popcorn.
No
I was
salt.
about it.
No salt, no butter. It was just
Was it
popped.
homemade?
Yeah, it was just
Wow.
popped kernels. She was like, "Here you go."
Yeah, my grandpa makes homemade popcorn, but he salts it, no butter though.
Well, your grandpa probably is a little normal with his food intake.
Yeah, a little maybe, but yeah, that's bizarre. Did you acquire a taste for?
I certainly did not. No,
Oh, okay.
no. I've acquired the taste for butter on my popcorn.
You're probably like extra thankful for that butter and that salt.
Yeah.
You're like, this is what it's meant to be.
Yeah.
Sweet. So I wanted to ask both of you guys. So this is kind of a cool time period because we're getting the 5th Stormlight book coming out in December. What is that's obviously we're all excited for that, but what is the last Brandon Sanderson read you've each done? Like, what was the last one you finished? Are you doing a Stormlight reread or just a new book, or like what's your last?
I mean, I have books right now, a couple Sanderson books that I'm reading. So I'm doing a Stormlight reread. I think actually it's inspired by you, Gary, because last time we had you on the show, you said you were gonna do a reread before the 5th one came out. And I was like, oh, I should do that. So I finished, my next one is Rhythm of War. Yeah, so I finished Oathbringer about a month ago, and I realized that I never read Windbreaker. Right?
Windbreaker?
I'm reading it right now.
Oathbringer?
No, it's not a Stormlight.
Dawn
It's,
Shard?
It's the one-off with the biochromatic breath.
Oh, Warbreaker.
Windbreaker. Oh, Windbreaker is a jacket.
Or something else, but yes.
They call Andrew the Windbreaker.
The Windbreaker. Which
Windbreaker.
The Wind.
Oh man. Which oaths, which ideals did you swear? I'm part of the Windbreakers.
It's hilarious.
Warbreaker is the book to read if you're gonna be rereading Stormlight. It has the most connections early on in crossover, so that's really cool.
Yeah. I'm about halfway right now. Obviously early enough to forget the name of the book, but it's really good. Like, I'm enthralled. So I'm reading that. I was like, I have to read this, and then I'll read Rhythm of War, and I'll be ready. So
did you catch Sword Nimi?
Yeah. So that was someone told me after I finished. It was a buddy of mine. I finished. Was it when does that sword show up first? Is it Words of Radiance?
Yeah. At the end, when everything goes down between Zeth and Kaladin.
Yes. So the sword shows up, and I was talking to a buddy about it, and I was like, that's so weird how like a shard blade is talking. And he was like, have you not read Warbreaker? And I was like, no. He's like, okay, stop what you're doing. You got to read that next. Yeah. Shut up. So I did. And I am.
That's awesome. Yeah. How about you, Gary?
So very excited for you. Warbreaker is a great book. I have not done well on that Cosmere reread. I started The Wheel of Time again, and I was working through that, and it's been a roller coaster of on and off and on and off, and I'm on book 10, and I haven't read it for probably 4 or 5 weeks. So yeah, I've just been kind of busy with personal life, and so I need to get back into it. I probably am not going to get that reread in that I really wanted to do before Wind and Truth, but I'll probably just reread them all after Wind and Truth comes out. The last book I probably read that was Stormlight was a while ago. It would have been either Rhythm of War or probably a reread of The Lost Metal. Going through Mistborn a second time. But yeah, I'm fuzzy enough that I can't tell you for certain.
Yeah. No.
10 Robert Jordan books. It makes you fuzzy.
Yeah, it's a lot. Have you guys read that series before?
Heath, you've read it, right?
Yeah. Thank you for answering for me.
I was gonna say I think I attempted the first one and I was like, whoa.
Really? Man, I feel like it's very easy. I don't know. Did you not feel like it was easy to jump into?
I think I attempted it before I was into books, before I was into reading.
That's sense.
Yeah, I was in a circle of people that were super into it, and they're like, "Here you go," and I was so intimidated.
No, that was how I got into Brandon Sanderson. I was the guy who was reading through. I was literally like loved Lord of the Rings so much, and I was like, "What are other books that aren't Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings that I need to do?" And they're like, "Wheel of Time." So I read through the whole series, and I was the guy who found out the author died by Brandon Sanderson telling me that he died. I was like, that was such a surreal moment. Like in the foreword of book, is it 10? We're at 10, 11,
I think he starts in 12.
Oh, that's right.
And
12, 13,
13, 14. So I still have 1.5 books left to go before I get to Sanderson.
Oh, is this your first read of The Wheel of Time? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, so he has a little forward in there. Is like, hey, by the way, I'm sorry if I'm the one to tell you this, that the author has passed away. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Did he read it? Or was it the narrators?
So it's the narrator. Yeah.
Okay.
So which would be cool for him to read that. But he just tells the story about how like my gosh, I'm blanking on Wheel of Time author. What's his name?
Robert Jordan.
That he was like, he really liked Brandon Sanderson's work and was like, this is the guy that I want to finish my story. And it was like one book, and Brandon Sanderson looked at it and was like, this is 3 books. And I don't know. He really, in my opinion, he does it very well, and he wraps up that series really well. So that was my introduction to Brandon Sanderson, because then I was like, who's this guy? What else has he done? And went straight into Way of Kings after that. It was a mountain.
Deep end.
Oh, good. Yeah. So mine real quick, but then we'll get to the kind of what we want for a Mistborn movie. I've been powering through Sanderson this summer. I feel like I started in Mistborn, which I had not read before, and I went through Era 1 and 2, and so fun. I was like, I loved Era 1, and then Era 2 was even just quicker and more like just kind of centered on the few characters. What really, really fun to read those back to back, I felt like, and so fun. This is ridiculous. I don't know if either of you guys have ever read it, but the last Sanderson book, I read the 2 Infinity Blade novels. Have you guys read those?
I've not read that, no.
They're really fun. Like, it's based off the iPhone game. I had no idea. Like, I was talking to a buddy about Sanderson, and he was like, oh, wait, did he write Infinity Blade? I love that game. Like, oh, the iPhone game? Like, no, it can't be about that. Looked it up. Sure enough, he made 2 novels off of it at some point, probably. They're like, audiobook wise, they're like 4 hours each. So they're really short, but just really fun epics. And I was like, oh, it was super fun. So, and now I'm reading Alcatraz and the Evil Librarian.
Nice.
So, a little lighter side,
awesome.
but super fun.
Yeah.
Have you read those, Gary?
No, I haven't read. The only non-Cosmere stuff I've read of Sanderson's was The Reckoners and most of Skyward.
Okay.
I didn't read the last one that came out a couple years ago, or any of the smaller novellas that Jancy's been working on.
Yeah.
On the back half, but both of those I really enjoyed. So I should probably eventually give those a read. I know I've heard that they're pretty middle grade for the Alcatraz,
Mm-hmm.
but and the Evil Librarians, but I've heard nothing but good things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of more of a young adult. Like, I was excited because I feel like this would be the first series of Sanderson that I would read to like my kids. And like that would be really fun just to like they're more lighthearted, not like I wouldn't say kiddish, but a lot of kind of the vein of Tress, just more of the humor that he's talking to you as the author. And they're fun. They're fun books. All right, so let's jump into kind of Gary. Why don't you explain what happened with your post about an AI that led you?
Yeah, so basically there was a so on Google, if you typed in Mistborn movie, is there a Mistborn movie in development? AI said yes, and it listed who was set to write the script for the movie. It said Brandon Sanderson was involved and gave all these details. And then it was also on IMDb, which if something gets on IMDb, it's pretty accurate, but I guess they don't update it. So it came out that in hindsight, that was actually from like years ago, years and years ago, and the project has since died. It wasn't even from this most recent push because they were going to make it right before the writer's strike and everything happened there, and before Marvel really started like struggling with their big box office movies, and Hollywood was just kind of struggling with everything it was throwing out for like a year or two there. Like everything was underperforming, and a lot of people thought coming out of COVID that there wasn't any room left for these giant big blockbusters anymore unless they were so that ended that attempt, but this was from even further before. I guess it was in the works, and Sanderson has sold the rights to the movie early on in his career, but they reverted back to him after X amount of years. And so it was incorrect. It's not being made by the people that AI pulled from. That's just old articles that are still on the internet, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't still be in development. Sanderson periodically during his weekly updates does mention that he's going to work with Hollywood, and that can mean a variety of different things. He's teased that he's possibly going to do an animated film for Tress of the Emerald Sea. There was another one that he said that was a non-Cosmere project that he might be getting going here soon. He's said that Mistborn is still in the works, but nothing is officially greenlit. So, I almost forget what the question was at this point. I hope I answered it.
No, that's okay. No, I just kind of want to give some context. So you kind of made a post of like, is this true? And it very quickly was like, no, it's not true. AI is just using old information that's technically still accurate. It's still in development, but it's not. I mean, it's been, so many years, so it's like not really. But I don't know. That just kind of got me excited again about the idea of when we're going to get that project. So I just love to talk about like what we would love to see from that. And I think the biggest first question is like, do you want a movie for, like book one Mistborn, or do you want like a mini series?
It's a great question. I know based off the IMDb, what the original plan was back then was to have the first one be a movie, and then the second book would be a mini series that would follow like the crew more. And I think that's interesting. To split it up and not just be consistent all the way through one way or the other. But I think personally, both could be great. I think a mini series would probably have a smaller budget, but could really like flesh out these characters, and especially if it was done by like HBO or people who are really attentive to like the details and stuff. I would be fully on board with a mini series, but I would also be excited for a movie. I think Mistborn's one of the only projects that I really could go either way and be happy as a fan.
Yeah, I think about too that we've had some things that kind of play around with this idea, but I love the thought of something going into a movie theater and home. Like,
Mm.
what if Mistborn does start out with a movie and then a show, and then like the big sections of it are movies. So like there's for both. I don't know. I just
Mm.
think that might be kind of a cool idea to have a mix. I think like The Mandalorian to me is something that stands out as like they're going to be 3 seasons and then probably a movie. And then I don't think it'll come back to TV, but that'd be kind of a cool format to have.
Mm.
But yeah, so I can see both. I think it would need to be with just the magic system. I think you'd have to have a higher budget project. So I think you're talking, yeah, Apple or HBO style miniseries if it's not, but I'd be open to either.
Amazon. Yeah.
Yeah, Amazon. So Andrew, I'm not sure if I'm going to ask you all these questions. So if you want to say something, feel free to jump in.
Oh,
I'm just going to keep
I
going.
will. Oh,
Yeah.
I will.
Objection. So Gary, I wanted to ask, I've got just a list of questions I kind of go through, but what challenges do you think would happen from like just showing Allomancy like on screen? Like what do you see? Do you see any difficulties there, or how do you even see that kind of playing out? Or what do you want to see from that?
Yeah, people talk about like Allomancy being a tough one to show in a budget. I don't actually think it would be too terrible. The most expensive thing would be flying around, people flying around, right? And making that look realistic. But you would really need to have a scene or multiple scenes that really explains the magic system to everybody, because so much of it is not a visual power. Like if you're talking about like breeze, what's the word? Emotional allomancy, when you push and pull on people's emotions. There are other tricks you can do to make that work, but I wonder like which one would be the hardest. Like copper clouds. ATM would be a pretty cool visual one to do.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like it's the Force in Star Wars, right? Like with pulling and pushing on different metals. But yeah, I don't know. Like there would definitely be challenges, but I'm not enough of a person who knows how visual effects work to be able to point out like, well, I think they'll struggle with this,
I think something that comes to my mind is steel, like burning steel and getting those blue lines that go out to every single metallic object. That seems like so much work to get it even close to accurate. Of like, I'm on top of a roof building, and yes, I think the cities are constructed probably with less metal because they know that Allomancers are around. But still, like, you just can't get around it, and that's kind of the whole point, right? So to have a character like Kelsey or teaching Vin, and he's like, oh, here's some steel, burn the steel. And then she sees that for the first time. How do you show that without just being blinded by, like, blue lines everywhere? And I've heard some people talk about, well, it's not so much visual. Like, as an audience, we would have to see it visually, but it's like instinctive for the Mistborn and for the spike eye of the Inquisitors, because they don't have eyes, but they can burn steel. So there is that instinctual aspect where, like, spidey sense, force sensitive, like you can feel something. And they could just address it. But since I read the book for the first time, I've always thought, man, that'd be really hard to convey, of like every single piece of metal around me has to have a blue line going to it for that instance.
Well, I think you wouldn't have to do it all the time.
Oh yeah,
you
absolutely.
definitely have scenes without it. And if I were directing the scene, I would probably do something along the lines of having the conversation between Kelsier and Vin, and have Kelsier give her the medal, have her burn it, and basically say, now, like, open your eyes. And she opens her eyes and sees all these blue lines, and it's her perspective. And then we cut to Kelsier's perspective, and there are no blue lines. And him being like,
Yeah. And he's like, do you see it?
And he's like, what do you see? And then you cut back to her perspective, and she sees it like, what's happening? And have that conversation. And then whenever there's like a moment when someone starts burning, like later on when Vin decides to follow Kelsier and they go into the Lord Ruler's home, she takes the medal and she sees the blue lines and starts jumping. And then you cut to like a montage of her jumping, and the lines can be gone, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
Yeah, like when we're the audience and we're like, when we're in our own perspective, we don't need to see it, but every now and then we can really be in her perspective and get a glimpse into what she sees.
Yeah, nice. I like that. Okay, someone write that down.
I don't know why I envisioned this, but I was like, I hope they don't do something, and I don't think they would, but like a Fast and Furious when they hit the NOS and like they go into the engine to see like the flames like going through the engine. I'm like, I hope we don't see that when like they're burning metals. Like they just like go into their body, like, I watch it burn. And but I
pull a magic school bus and go all the way through the
it's literally on the DNA level. And
yeah.
Here's how metal is burned. I was thinking I almost want to see like a kind of like an Edgar Wright or like a Guy Ritchie, like those quick scenes where something is happening and you have the character themselves narrate it. You know, it's like, okay, here's the lowdown on metal burn, you know, and it's just like they would just go through and like that could be really cool too. Like, you know, it's like the old George Lucas method. Like, how do you tell people what's going on in Star Wars? Like, start with a crawl, tell them what's going on, you know? I didn't know anything about Mistborn, and I think reading Mistborn for the first time, it was confusing for me. I'm like, what is burning metal? So they're drinking them, but they're holding them in their stomach. Like I feel like it's a bit more confusing than even some of his other kind of magic systems, like at least for me, but
it's not super visual.
Yes. Yeah,
like
exactly.
it is visual, but also like so much is happening in their heads that needs to then be conveyed somehow. I think like the two scenes that would probably be very pivotal would be Kelsier and Vince discussion. You really got to get that dialogue right and get the visuals right to have impact later on in the story. And then also when Kelsier steals the ATM from Keep Venture, that's the first time where we really see all these powers in the book, and having a scene like that where we can see Kelsier doing all this. I don't know if a voiceover explaining along the way would, like Guy Ritchie style, would work, but that would be the place to do it if you did.
Yeah. Well, sweet. So character wise, do you have anybody you'd want to play like Vin or Kelsier? Specific actors or just types?
Yes.
You got a list.
So no, I have to remember the name here. So I'm sure people have heard this before. It's not an uncommon wish, but Vin, I would love to see Daphne Keane play her.
Oh yeah,
the longer we go, the longer we go, the less likely it becomes, just because she's getting older. I would have loved to see Hugh Jackman as Kelsier once upon a time. I think he's aged out of the role, to be completely fair. The guy who played Finnick Odair from Hunger Games, I do not remember the actor's name. Let's see, played by, I'm just looking this up, Sam Claflin. I think he would do really good as a Kelsier type. There's a couple of people that I would love to see.
Wow, that's awesome. Those are great. I didn't think about that because I thought you had said at one point that you also thought Hugh Jackman would be a good Wax.
I think he'd be a better Wax. Yeah, because Wax is supposed to be older, right? He's like, should I even still be doing law enforcement anymore? Or should I retire as part of his character development?
Yeah, he's the I'm too old for this guy anyways, so that'd be kind of cool. But yeah, I did not think about Daphne. So that she plays X-23, right? And the Wolverine. And I thought about Millie Bobby Brown. I thought that might be interesting as Vin. Maybe she's too old as well now. It's hard to like when you're rewatching Stranger Things and she's, middle
11 years
school.
old. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Yeah, you're like, okay, could she work when she was in season 1 or season 2? And then you're like, okay, well now she's in her 20s, Yeah, I mean, I think Daphne Keane is as well. Like, I think Daphne Keane is rapidly getting to the point where I don't know if she'd be too old. Hopefully they'll end up getting a really, really great unknown,
Yeah. That'd be amazing.
it's always, I know that's hard for people. Yeah, like that's got to be hard for finding that perfect person. But yeah, I think unknowns are so cool to have in those younger roles because they just become them. Your Daniel Radcliffe's, like he is Harry Potter, and that's really cool to do that. Andrew, you got any dreams of actors?
Man, so this might be a little shake the boat. Like this wouldn't work for a Mistborn movie, or a show. But honestly, I think if the Mistborn is going to go to like a live action TV show, film, medium, whatever, that there needs to be like a Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings style prologue before anything happens. Like there's a narrator who's saying like, hey, this is the world. And like, in my opinion, I would love to get a prologue of like, well,
No, I thought you were going to say a name, and I was going to point at you if you said the same one I'm thinking of. But sorry, continue.
I would love to see a prologue start off with some Adonalsium stuff, like there's a god, and then 16, we don't know who they are, come together, tear them apart, like. And they get all like these shards, and then you follow one. So you get that quick 30-second interaction of like, at a what? Who? They killed a god? How did they do that? And then the rest of the time, it literally, you just follow one shard down to Scadrial, and you go, and like, while that guy is going down there, like, this is my place. It's like, and they promised not to interact with each other, but then they were like, was it ruin and preservation? We're like, let's make a place together. And let's make a pact to not like overpower one another. But they did, like preservation tricked ruin, and that stuff I feel like needs to be in like a Lord of the Rings style prologue before the movie begins. Because
narrates it.
Oh,
I think Gary has a name. I want to hear Gary's
I do
name.
have a name.
Okay, who?
If you have a thought,
I don't. Honestly,
Sazed.
Whoa, nice.
So Sazed, like eons ago, there was God, and God was fractured. But you don't get into too much detail because obviously Sanderson's saving that for Dragons. For the book series Dragonsteel, that's not going to be happening for 20 plus years still. So you just leave that little tidbits, but jump straight into it. And he talks about ruin and preservation, and it wouldn't give it away because people could be like, oh, by the end of Mistborn, the first book, people would be like, oh, says it's a keeper. He keeps history. He keeps religions.
Yes,
it makes sense for him to be the narrator. But then when you get to the end of the series and the third movie, you're like, wait a minute, God was narrating this whole thing the whole time.
That'd be
I think I would have Sazed narrate for sure the opening.
Yeah,
that's a cool idea.
Side tangent. In my reread of Stormlight right now, I think that the Stormlight archive are like, it's a history of their books.
I don't know why I'm just loving your hand motions. Right?
I'm sorry.
The reread
books
to the books.
I think that Sazed is telling the story of the Stormlight archive.
Interesting.
There's one. I think there are two instances in Stormlight where the chapter begins with one of like a god in his introduction instead of like a script from one of the in-universe books. And I think it was Oathbringer. It's either the second or third one, Words of Radiance or Oathbringer. But Sazed starts a chapter, and it's just his perspective. And he doesn't list his name, but it's obviously him because it ends with, I think.
I think.
Yeah. And so I was like, is Sazed telling me the Stormlight Archive story right now?
So those are letters between Hoyd and Sazed. There's a
And the
whole
dragon?
series of them. Yeah, they reference
Oh.
that part. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
pretty cool once you find
That's
all these
even-
Easter eggs. Yeah,
Man, that
So
might be even
Hoyd-
cooler than my theory.
You'll even notice there's one, I forget which book exactly where it is, but Sazed's talking about being limited and what he can do because of having two conflicting shards with conflicting intents. And he talks about needing a sword and how he will be making himself a sword. And that is Wax, right? That Wax is Harmony's sword. And that's in the Stormlight Archive, right? That's not in a Mistborn book, so...
That's so cool. Yeah, this is why we love it, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say it gets better. It gets bigger. Like when you realize all the connections, and I think I never thought about Mistborn starting out with the breaking, and that would be so cool too. You could even do it as more of a light thing, like not as people, but just so it's more like
conceptual.
Yeah, more conceptual. So it's like this one thing is blowing up and these pieces are going, just like a visual of that beginning. It's like, that's kind of an interesting way to do that. So another question I had is, are there any characters in like specifically Mistborn that you would love to see kind of more of their stuff? Like if we're getting a TV series and there's some room to add more character development or character scenes, is there any characters you'd love to see more of? Or are you just like, nope, Sanderson's perfect. Don't touch his work.
I think, especially like in a movie, I think you're going to see less of these characters, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you were to do a 6 episode series that were each an hour long, then I'd love to see, like if we're talking about just the first book, it's not quite the same because I was going to say the Khandra with Tensoon. But he's not until book 2. I mean, he makes an appearance. He makes a cameo in book 1. But yeah, I'd love to see the Khandra more. In book 1 specifically, I'd love to see like more of the crew, maybe. See more of Clubs, more of Hammond, that kind of stuff, really flesh out those characters. I know that Sanderson has said that he would probably gender swap Doxson and Ham if he were to do a movie. He wrote a script where he switched them because he talked about how it was an early book and he wasn't very comfortable writing female POVs yet, so he just let the whole crew be male. But he's like, but now he would probably swap those out. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's cool to me too, that like an author would be like, no, I think this could be tweaked a little bit. I feel like so many people are so like, no, that's what I've done and that's the best. Like the idea that you could go back and critique yourself a little bit is kind of cool. I mean, even Tolkien, goes back and it's like, after he read The Lord of the Rings, he's like, The Hobbit, that one scene isn't quite good enough, with the riddles in the dark. It needs to be changed, and that's really cool. So let me see here. Andrew, you got questions?
Yeah. I think of Scadrial not having a moon often, and how that would affect the incessant nighttime scenes. So how do you light and visually show? There's no
ash mounts, maybe the volcanoes, right?
So some ambient, like beyond the city kind of glow. But then I guess you also get the fact that like the crew and the Mistborn in particular can navigate the mist that is thick and not well lit because of their abilities. So you can dial back the mist in that sense. But visually for an audience, it would be really interesting to see like a dark, like Gotham City, Gothic style setting where like, yeah, most people don't wander around at nighttime here, right? I think that would be really cool. And I don't think they have to go like the horror route, but just like scary and convey that visually would be amazing.
Well, yeah, I definitely think like Mistborn could very well, if you wrote it correctly, the screenplay correctly, could very well go into thriller / borderline horror when you talk about just like the spikes through the eyes, the way that they make Inquisitors, if they get into that.
Mist rays.
Those would be horror-esque. There's one other thing I was going to say that was quite alarming, but it's
the Koloss always freaked me out.
Oh yeah,
like that description of like the skin like not holding them enough, and I'm like, oh, that's terrifying.
Yeah, that
is. And the violence as well. Like like you forget how violent those books are. They were the most violent that Sanderson's ever done. Like when they murdered Vin's crew, right? One guy was hung by a blade in his throat.
Yeah.
Like there's just so like there's so many like haunting visuals that like you could lean into that if you wanted to and really make it something of a horror movie.
Man.
Well, this is a question for both of you, but did you guys have any directors and or composers in mind that you'd love to see?
So I know who Brandon would love to direct it.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't know, I made a video about this, but I went to the book signing for Brandon's new children's book, The Most Boring Book. And while I was there, I got to get it signed by Sanderson, and he's like, "Do you have any questions for me?" And I said, "Okay, you have said that you're holding out with Hollywood to make sure you have the most control as possible. Rightly so. You don't want another Aragon on your hands, but you're holding out to have as much control as you can with your books when they're adapted." I said, "Is there a director that if they were willing and would sign up to do Mistborn or Stormlight, that you would say, all control goes to you? Like I'll step back. You can just do everything." And he said, yes. He gave me 3 names. He said, Christopher Nolan. He said, well, that's not to say these people are interested in doing it or haven't even read the books, but if they did read the books for fans, he would do it. He said James Cameron, and the GOAT, Steven Spielberg were the 3. And I did put him on the spot. I would be surprised if he didn't also say yes to who did Lord of the Rings.
Peter Jackson.
Yeah, I bet he'd say yes to Peter Jackson as well, but he didn't say so.
Yeah.
I spoke with him, and I'd agree with him on all of those. I'd be super excited to see any of those directors take a shot at a Mistborn movie. They would all be so different. The movie would be very different with each of those directors, but I would love it if any of them directed.
That's cool to think about all of those directors, their take on Mistborn. Like Cameron, I know would be super atmospheric, and I don't think we've really seen. I mean, well, T2 would be a very dark, gritty. I think Spielberg would be a lot more of the whimsical in there, the wonder, the awe. Nolan would be really interesting. I think Nolan, I feel like, could get the gothic to me. But
he could do the dark, but I feel like Nolan is so accustomed to really, really hard projects that would give me as a fan hope. Like, okay, this guy like can be super devoted to really complex stories. Tenet, insane. The fact that movie exists and is made like reverse and forward at the same time, like, blows my mind. Man, I would say Gareth Edwards would be, I think Christopher Nolan was my number one, but we talked about him. But my second would be Gareth Edwards. So he did the remake of Godzilla in 2014. He did Rogue One, and he's done The Creator, which I think is on Netflix now, but some really cool, really, really cool sci-fi stuff, and some of my favorite over the last couple of years. So
that's cool.
I'm a huge fan of Rogue One. Like,
oh yeah,
it's super good.
Also, speaking of Christopher Nolan, do you guys know that, have you seen the thing on like online about how Interstellar was released in October 2014, and that means only 16 minutes have passed on Miller's Planet?
Yeah, I
no
did see
way.
that.
Whoa,
Those are cracking me up. I don't have a director in mind personally. I could not think of someone. I think all those are great choices. But for me, I went music, and I think Bear McCreary for Mistborn.
Oh yeah.
I think, like, I think there's like, I think Stormlight Archive, you want to go more of like a John Williams or like a John Powell, kind of like epic, triumphant, but it's like, I feel like you need that dark gothic really needs to come through music. And I don't know, I just think Bear McCreary would do such a cool job.
Yeah, for sure.
Me and Andrew talked about, I'm assuming you haven't seen it because most people haven't, but there's a movie called The Demeter. It's about the ship that was taking Dracula from Transylvania to England, and it's just about the ship. It's a terrible movie, but he wrote the music, and the soundtrack is just
very good.
It's just banging.
That's awesome. I love a good soundtrack. I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, just the title, just like the first track, it's so good. It's just like very like, I feel like you could just put that in Mistborn for like the Lord Ruler or and the Inquisitor's theme. It's like, oh, it's so good. Okay, so here's a sadder question, but what would be a deal breaker as a fan if it was changed for the adaptation? Like, what's something that they would change that would just be that gut punch?
The Lord Ruler, Santa Claus. I don't know. Like, there's probably like a lot of things you could do that would be wrong. But what's likely to be done? I don't know. Change up the Ellen and Vin dynamic, I guess. Change up the fact that Vin has these two sides of her, where she, on one hand, is very turns in on herself and is protective and secretive and not trusting, and on the other end, she like wants to go to balls and wear dresses, and like that makes her so fascinating as a character. If they leaned one way or the other too much and made her just like some love-struck teenager the whole time, or someone who was just a badass and didn't care about Ellen at all, like either way would be tough. Like, you got to have that balance with her.
Yeah, I think there's a lot about Mistborn that would be hard to balance because there's light, darkness consistently. I think shying away from the darkness when you're trying to show, like, Vin is drawn to balls and dresses and she kind of wants to be romanced, but not by you. Oh wait, come back. No wait. But if they shied away from the horrific aspect of the city, like the underground, like the Inquisitors, I think if they did that, I'd probably throw my hands up a little bit. Like, okay, it's less compelling then. Like, the evil is less evil, and the Lord Ruler looks better. I guess, because if you don't have those little nuggets of like terrifying, scary things, then why do you need like these rebellious heroes to like break down the system, right? So I think I would need that.
Yeah, because you want. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No.
interrupt. I'd say likewise. I'd also really hope they show the dark side of Kelsier.
Nice. Yeah.
Just make him not just make him a hero.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting that the main character is a legitimate, like, maybe this is too harsh of a term, but like a terrorist. He's like a in-city rebel that will do anything to get rid of the high class. And he has moments where he's like, they all deserve to be killed, and I don't feel bad about it.
And moments where he's willing to kill his own soldiers, right?
Yeah.
With Demu against the soldier that was worried and thought they were in over their heads, right? It was like you could have, and I have conversations with people about this all the time who disagree with me, but like you have the one character, like it's not a bad thing to think, I think we're in over our heads. I'm worried about our safety as a group and as an army. And that person didn't even voice their concerns, but you use emotional allomancy to push them into voicing it, and then you use Demu, and you're going to kill him. And then Sanderson said in the original draft he did kill him, that he used Demu to kill this man that he manipulated into that situation. But he pulled back because the beta readers hated it so much. But it gives you insight into like how Sanderson views Kelsier, that Kelsier really, he's not a journey before destination. Kelsier is a destination before journey. Kelsier doesn't care how he gets his results. He's going to get them. And that if he has to kill innocent people, if he has to do whatever he has to do, he's going to get there.
Yeah, he has that end goal of the first book in mind the entire time. So it makes sense that he is brash and willing to sacrifice others to get himself to that point, to be what he needs to be for the ska. Man.
Yeah, I think to me, like showing that, I keep thinking if hopefully this is going to be, it's going to come out and it will be successful and we'll get so many more, Brandon Sanderson adaptions. And so I assume they would do, the Stormlight archive. And I think you have to show the differences there, because I feel like sometimes the temptation is kind of like what they did with The Hobbit, is they made The Hobbit the Lord of the Rings. It's like, but The Hobbit's not the Lord of the Rings. It's not an epic. It's a smaller, journey tale. And I think, really showing the kind of like, the world is broken in Mistborn. It is raining ash from the sky. Like this is a fallen, destroyed world. And I think, going horror, I think is such an interesting thing that I never thought about really before. Like you have to kind of accentuate that so you can kind of have the different triumphant, or especially obviously at the end, and I don't want to spoil, but the end of Era 1, becomes so much more impactful that way. All right. Well, I got one more question here, but just about the movie in general. But Andrew, do you have any questions?
No, Gary, you've answered all my questions.
No more questions left. Oh yeah, rock and roll.
I have a question about you guys. What are your thoughts on animated versus live action?
Oh, good question. Okay. We started before the show started. You talked about Arcane. You had a story for us. I think in light of Arcane, there is good hope for an awesome Sanderson adaptation of one of his series. I don't necessarily have a preference. I think maybe Stormlight would be best in animation. Ooh, that's such a good question. That would kind of gets me amped, especially like we're a little bit away from the War of the Rohirrim. The War of the Rohirrim. Whoa. Why did I say that so weird?
Rohirrim.
Rohirrim. War of the Rohirrim. and that's animated, and I'm pumped. So if that goes well, I'll be even more psyched for like future properties going the animation route. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead. I'd like to hear your thoughts, Heath.
You saw my breath. No, I think it's a struggle for me because my heart is always movies, live action, but I know that's such a tall order, and I know they could do so many amazing things. So there's so many works, I know they couldn't do all of them, and so I'd rather have them animated than nothing. But I think I definitely would prefer live action for the main storylines, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think you can also talk about the business side of things. If the end goal is to build the brand and the end goal is to reach as many people as possible, I think live action is the way to go. I think that, like, especially after rewatching Arcane, there's just no way you could have made Arcane as visually stunning in live action. Like, that's just not something that could possibly have been done. It was such an incredible show to watch. Just with my eyes, if you turn off the sound, like, you'd still be so engaged watching that show. And I think that, like, that style in particular would be so good for a Mistborn adaptation. Like, if I found out the artists and the creators of Arcane were on board to do a Mistborn show or movie, you'd hear nothing but praise from me as a fan. I do hope, though, I'd love the fandom to grow. So I would love live action. I also just love live action in general. I think there's a suspension of disbelief that we can get with live action that we can't always get quite with animated projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's tough too, because especially, like we've talked before about, our imagination, it creates these hugely, epic things, and sometimes when you see a visual, you're so limited that it's not quite what you wanted it to be, or it can't be sometimes. And man, it does feel like, have you guys ever seen Fate Stay, that anime series? It's just, look up a trailer sometime. It's one of those things that's like, it's so beautiful. It's just like these basically demigod fighting each other, and it's just like, I don't know, it's just like, wow, you see some of the visuals they can do. Arcane, what is the connection to Sanderson there?
I don't think there is one.
Okay, he was just
Arcane. Have you seen
the
show? It's incredible. Like, 100% recommend it. It's League of Legends. So it's based off a video game.
Right. Yep. Okay.
But it is just some of the best writing I've ever seen. Like, after you watch it, you can go on YouTube and just look up all these video essays that just dive into, like, these visual storytelling that they do, where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that this animal is always around at these times. And it's just so many things that, like, the symbolism, the writing is just so magnificent. The characters are so well written. But the main thing that I've heard as far as Arcane connected to Sanderson, widespread among the fandom, is when people bring up a Mistborn adaptation, see anything that, like, anytime you see anything about a Mistborn adaptation on the internet, if it's got more than 20 comments, you go through the comments, you're going to see people saying they need to animate it like Arcane.
Yeah.
Everywhere there are people saying they need to animate it like Arcane. And the world there, like, there's in the show, there's an undercity that is a little bit more cyberpunk, that could very well fit the vibe of a Mistborn city. Obviously, like, the aesthetics would be a little bit different, but the tone would work really, really well.
Yeah, that's really cool. We'll have to check that out. I love being given homework of watching things. Like, well, sorry for the pod, I gotta watch Arcane now. So
yeah, sorry, honey. No, you'll love
Take
it.
the kids.
Yeah, and season 2 is coming out in November, so
that's awesome.
Perfect time to become a fan.
So I'll wrap up with this question here, but so you said something that really stuck out to me the last time we had you on, is that you talked about how Harry Potter has enough pull with fans that if just the fans went to see it, they could make that happen. What do you think the movie could do to or the TV show or whatever, this Mistborn project, what could it do to pull in that wider audience? What do you think needs to happen?
Interesting. I'd say you need good marketing. But you got to hit on the things that reach the wider audience, and you look at movies that are hitting that wider audience today, it has good action, good visual effects, good comedy, makes you laugh, all of those things. But that's so tough because there are even movies that hit all those things that flop at the box office, right? I think with the fan base, the kind of fan base that Sanderson has, it's one that proselytizes a lot. We are always trying to tell our friends that they need to read The Cosmere, and so much to the point that Sanderson jokes about it, and when he's at events, he's like, if you were pulled here by a friend, I apologize, right? He says things like that. And so I think that would be something that it would have going for us, because I think if he made a Mistborn movie, we would all want it to succeed so we could get more. So I could definitely see there being a concentrated movement by the fans of all of us being let's push the hashtag, let's all of us post on our socials that people need to go and see this and try to get it to be more successful. I don't know if that would be enough, but yeah. But the real answer to your question would be to hit the staples of what successful movies are doing now, right?
Yeah.
Good action, good story, good humor, right?
Yeah, we talked, our last episode was about just the summer movies, the highs and lows. And it was so interesting how those movies that people think are going to do well don't. Some just flop. And it's just this should have been the hit of the summer. And sometimes it's not. And it's so hard to predict. But I think the world is ripe for this type of movie, this type of show. I think it's so unique, and I hope it pulls it in. So I guess we just got to keep spreading the word and push Sanderson. Andrew actually goes door to door on Thursday nights, and he knocks on people's doors.
Yeah.
Can I tell you about Brandon Sanderson? Kind of Jehovah's Witness style. So
yeah. What can I say?
We need more of that. You're doing Aldenasium's work.
There you go.
So
nice. I do actually. Pardon me. I have a copy of The Way of Kings. I'm a teacher, so it's on my desk at school. And one of my, excuse me, I lost my voice this week. If you can't tell.
Oh no.
One of my onboarding questions, week one of school, is what's your favorite book, favorite sport, all this stuff. And I had a freshman in high school this year who said his favorite book was The Way of Kings. And I was like, did you say that just because you saw it on my desk? And he's like, no, I really like it. The Stormlight is my favorite series. I was like, so Heath, to answer your question, I think the base needs to continue to go the younger generation.
Yeah.
Kids need to see their parents reading these tomes and be like, I can do that. That's I'll read it with my dad. I'll read it with my mom. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's why Harry Potter did so well. If you go into that younger generation, they all age up. They have more money to go see those movies, and their kids love it too, So it's just time. It's going to happen.
The fan base is growing rapidly. With Stormlight 5 coming out, on TikTok, there are so many people who are I'm reading all of the Stormlight archive before book 5 comes out, and they've never read a Sanderson book before, and they're documenting their experience, and they're just in love with the series. And it's really getting a big push, and it's just growing. The Kickstarter came along, and there's a big boost, and Stormlight 5 is coming out. There's a big boost. It's just gonna keep going and going, and the fandom's only gonna grow. And maybe the longer they wait, the more successful the movie will be. But also if they make a successful movie, it'll jumpstart the fandom and maybe get us into that George R.R. Martin conversation,
Yeah.
level
Yeah,
of
very
fame.
true. Yeah, I never thought about that. Even kind of resolving Era 1 of Stormlight. I know like several people that don't like to read a series until it's complete. Because like, I'm just going to go, when this comes out, I'm going to read every single book. And they don't want to read 4 and then wait 3 years, So yeah, maybe that would spur some on too. But well, Gary, thanks for being on, man. It was great to have you as our Cosmere expert. Do you want to kind of push a little bit of what you do and the fun you have on the interwebs?
Yeah, I dabble with Cosmere. I'd say I have like a high school diploma.
There you go.
There are definitely people out there who are university experts. Out like 17th Shard and Cosmere Quandaries. Like there are people out there who just Cosmere Studies or the Cosmere Academy. All these people that I go to whenever I have deep questions if I can't find it online, right? And they really understand how all the magic systems are interconnected, and it's just beyond me. But what I do is I just read the books for vibes. I try to understand as much as I can, and then I just make jokes about it. Occasionally I do theories. I also, if I hear a piece of news, I will do updates on what's going on in the fandom or potential movies or adaptations. I like to post all that. It's on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, Cosmere_Junkie for all of them, but YouTube, which is just Cosmere Junkie. Yeah, but most of it's memes and jokes. So if you are not caught up, follow me with caution. I try to be sensitive about spoilers, but if I think it's something small or something from a book 10 years ago, I will not always put up a spoiler warning for those.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I think you have a lot of fun reading Sanderson, and that joke world is so cool too. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's people who like have doctorates in this stuff too, but it's cool to see someone. I feel like you help the fan base, just like, hey, this is exciting, it's awesome, but it's fun. Like I think sometimes like you get people that are so intense about something, like this is the Bible of this, it's just like, okay, but let's have fun. It's a story, like let's enjoy it, and get passionate for sure. But so I really appreciate that you have that side too. So
thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, sweet. Thanks for being on. We'll have you again when there's more movie rumblings or whatever comes next, right?
Yeah. Whenever you guys want to chat, let me know.
Let's do it. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah, for sure.
See you, Gary.
I'll see you. Bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. That was our whole interview with Gary, also known as Cosmere Junkie. Check him out. We listed all his platforms. And as always, go see a movie.
Go see a movie.